Tonight we're in Mommy and Daddy's room again, aren't we? And I don't have my bear pillow. Well, I'll have to do without it in here. I don't know if I can, though, Aunt.
Talk.
Talk, okay. All right, here's where we stopped last night. And look at the face of the wizard. Is that scary?
Yeah.
Sure is. Okay, it says, if you want me to help you return to Kansas, you must first do something for me. You must kill the Wicked Witch of the West. And Dorothy began to cry. Oh, thank you. She said, I've never killed anything willingly. And even if I wanted to kill the Wicked Witch, I wouldn't know how to kill the witch. But the Great Oz only said, that is my answer. Until the Wicked Witch dies, you will not return to Kansas. Remember that the Wicked Witch is very evil and ought to be killed. Now go, go, do not return until she is dead. Oh. Well, sadly, Dorothy left the throne room and told her friends what had happened. And the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion felt very sad because they could not help Dorothy. And the next morning, the soldier with the green beard led the Scarecrow into the throne room. And there, sitting on the sparkling throne, was a beautiful woman dressed in green silk and covered with jewels. And large green wings grew from her shoulders. And the Scarecrow bowed, and the beautiful woman said, I am the Great Oz. Who are you, and what do you want? Now, the Scarecrow was very surprised because he had expected to see the head that Dorothy had told him about. But he answered the Great Oz and explained that what he wanted more than anything else was to have some brains, because he didn't have any brains. Oz was quiet for a few minutes, and then he said, I never grant favors without something in return. If you will kill the Wicked Witch of the West, I will give you the best brains in all the land. You will be the wisest man there is. And now the Scarecrow was very confused. But you asked Dorothy to kill the Wicked Witch of the West, he said. So I did, answered Oz. I don't care who kills her, but until she is dead, I will not grant your wish. And so the Scarecrow returned to his friends, and he told them about the Great Oz had appeared in the form of a beautiful woman, but had refused to give him any brains until the Wicked Witch was killed. And now the next morning, the Tin Man was called into the throne room, and this time the Great Oz appeared as a terrible beast. Look at that. Is that awful looking? It looks like a monster out of Ninja Turtles, doesn't it? The creature was as big as an elephant, and it had a head like a rhinoceros, and it had 5 arms and 5 long legs. Ugh. And thick woolly hair covered its body, and the Tin Man had never seen such a terrible-looking creature. I am Oz, the Great and Terrible, spoke the beast. Who are you, and what do you want? And so the Tin Man explained that he wanted a heart so that he could love. And Oz waited only a minute before he replied, and he explained to the Tin Man that he would receive a wonderful heart only if he helped Dorothy and the Scarecrow to kill the Wicked Witch of the West. And the Tin Man bowed his head, and slowly he left the throne room. And when he returned to his friends, he sadly told them what the Oz had said.
Oh, I see his belly button.
That's a lion's belly button, huh?
Yeah.
And the next morning, it was the lion's turn to talk to the Great Oz. And when he entered the throne room, he expected to see the great head or the beautiful woman or the hideous beast. But no! What the lion saw was none of these things. Instead, to his surprise, he saw a great ball of fire. And the ball of fire was so fierce and glowing that he could hardly look at it. And as the lion moved away from the heat of the fire, he heard the quiet voice say, I am Oz, the Great and Terrible. Who are you, and what do you want? And the frightened lion answered. He said, I'm just a cowardly lion, afraid of everything, and I came to beg you to give me courage so that I could become king of the beasts. And the ball of fire burned for a time, and then the voice said, bring me proof that the wicked witch is dead, and then I will give you courage. And the lion was angry at the great Oz, but he was too frightened to say anything. And so he ran from the room, and he joined his friends. And after the lion told Dorothy what had happened, she looked at him sadly. Well, what shall we do now? She asked. There's only one thing we can do, answered the lion, and that is to go to the land of the Winkies, where the wicked witch lives, and destroy her.
The land of the Winkies.
Poor Hunter Cheyenne had to have some garlic in their ears there for a minute, didn't you? Right in the middle of the story. All right, well, let's forget about that now. And remember, the lion is running out of the room, and he talks to his friends. They say, let's go to the land of the Winkies, where the wicked witch lives, and destroy her. But suppose we can't destroy her, said Dorothy. Then I will never have courage, said the lion. And I will never have a heart, said the Tin Man. And I'll never have any brains, said the Scarecrow. And I will never see Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, cried Dorothy. So the four friends thought for a long time. I suppose we must try it, but I'm sure I don't want to kill anybody, and even to see Aunt Em again, I don't think I... So Dorothy and her friends decided, though, that they would begin their journey the very next morning. And so Dorothy and her friends were led to the gates of the Emerald City, and the guardian of the gate removed their green glasses and put them back in the green box. Remember how they had to have those glasses?
Yes.
And he wished them good luck and reminded Dorothy that the wicked witch was very, very mean and would try to make them into her slaves. You know what a slave is?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody who keeps you all imprisoned and you have to do what they say. So after they had said goodbye to the guardian of the gate, they began to walk towards the west, and soon the hot sun made Dorothy and the lion very tired, and so they lay down in the cool grass and fell asleep, while the Tin Man and the Scarecrow kept watch. And while Dorothy and the lion were sleeping, the wicked witch of the west was watching them. She had only one eye, but it was as powerful as a telescope, and she could see everything. And so, as she sat by the door of her castle, she happened to look around, and she saw Dorothy lying asleep with her friends beside her. And the wicked witch was angry to find them in their country, and she blew on a silver whistle that hung around her neck. She went... And in a few seconds, a pack of wolves, mean, nasty, hungry wolves, came running to her. They had long legs and fierce nose and sharp, sharp teeth. Go to those people and tear them to pieces. Aren't you going to make them your slaves? Asked the leader of the wolves. No! No! Answered the witch. One is made of tin, and one is made of straw, and one's a little girl, and one is a lion. And none of them is fit to work, so you may just tear them to pieces. Very well, said the wolf, and he dashed away at full speed with the rest of the pack. But the Scarecrow and the Tin Man were wide awake, and they heard the wolves coming. And the Tin Man grabbed his axe, and as the leader of the wolves ran towards him, he swung his arm in the air, and he chopped off the wolf's head. And soon, as each wolf came close, the Tin Man killed it with his sharp axe. And soon 40 wolves lay dead in a great heap of wolves. And then the wicked witch saw that what the Tin Man had done, and she became angrier than before, and she blew her silver whistle twice. And in a few minutes a great flock of wild crows came flying towards her,
And the wicked witch said to the King Crow, "Fly at once to the strangers and peck out their eyes and tear them to pieces." And the wild crows flew towards Dorothy and her friends. And when she saw them coming, Dorothy was afraid, but the Scarecrow said, "This is my battle. Lie down beside me and you'll be safe." So everyone but the Scarecrow lay down on the ground, and the Scarecrow stood up and stretched out his arms. And when the crows saw him, they were frightened and did not dare come any closer because they were afraid of scarecrows. Because that's what they're designed to do, isn't it? Is to scare crows. But the King Crow said, "It's only a stuffed man. I will peck his eyes out." And the King Crow flew at the Scarecrow, who caught it by the head and twisted its neck.
Who's that?
The Scarecrow caught the bird, the King Crow, and twisted its neck, and soon there were 40 crows lying dead on the ground beside him. And when the wicked witch saw that all of her crows were lying in a heap, she went into a terrible rage. Yeah, the wicked witch was so mad. And she blew her silver whistle 3 times. And each time a great swarm of bees came flying to her. And the wicked witch told the bees to sting Dorothy and her friends to death. Just go and get them and sting them and sting them and sting them everywhere, all over their bodies. Uh-oh. But the Scarecrow saw the bees coming, and he scattered his straw over Dorothy and Toto and the lion. And that way, the bees flew at the Tin Man, and their stingers broke off when they tried to sting the Tin Man. And the Tin Man was not hurt at all, but the bees died, and their bodies fell in the field and were scattered. And the wicked witch was so angry when she saw the bees lying in little heaps that she stamped her feet, and she tore her hair, and she gnashed her teeth, and then she called 12 of her slaves, who were the Winkies, and gave them sharp spears, and she told them to find the strangers and destroy them. And the Winkies were not brave people, but they had to obey the wicked witch. And so they marched away. But when the lion saw them coming, he gave out a great roar. And the poor Winkies were so frightened that they ran away as fast as they could. And when the wicked witch saw what had happened, she made up her mind how to act. And she went to the cupboard, and she took out her golden cap. Now the cap had a special charm, and whoever owned it could call 3 times upon the winged monkeys. These creatures would obey any order that were given, but no one could command the winged monkeys more than 3 times, and so the wicked witch had used the charm of the cap twice before. So this was her last wish. And so she put on the golden cap, she put it on her head, and stood on her left foot, and then she recited a secret charm, and soon the sky was darkened, and low rumbling sound could be heard, and in a few minutes the witch was summoned by a crowd of monkeys with huge and powerful wings on their shoulders. They were hideous, awful-looking monkeys.
I remember them in Dorothy.
Do you remember them in the movie?
Yeah.
Remember them in the movie of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, how they came?
Yep.
Well, the wicked witch ordered the winged monkeys to destroy the strangers, except for the lion. She wanted him to be brought to her so she could make him her slave. "Your command shall be obeyed," said the leader, and then the winged monkeys flew away up into the sky, and they found the Tin Man, and the monkeys grabbed him and carried him way up into the air, and when they were over some sharp and pointed rocks, they dropped the poor Tin Man, and he fell.
Wow.
He lay dented and battered so he couldn't move. And the rest of the monkeys got the Scarecrow, and with their long fingers they pulled all of the straw out of his clothes, and they pulled off his head, and they made his hat and his boots and his clothes into a small bundle, and they threw it up into the top branches of a tree. And after they had done all this, the monkeys threw pieces of rope around the lion, and they wound many coils around his body and head and his legs. And when they were sure he was unable to bite or scratch, they lifted him up and flew away with him to the witch's castle. And at the castle he was placed in a small yard with a high iron fence and bars so that he could not escape. But now Dorothy was not harmed at all. She stood with Toto in her arms and watched what the monkeys did to her friends. And the leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her, and his long, hairy arms stretched out, and his ugly face grinned terribly. But when he saw the mark of the good witch's kiss on Dorothy's forehead, he stopped. He said, "No, don't touch her. We dare not harm this little girl. She's protected by the power of good, and that is greater than the power of evil. All we can do is carry her up to the castle of the Wicked Witch and leave her there." So they carefully lifted Dorothy in their arms, and they carried her to the castle. And the Wicked Witch was surprised and worried when she saw the mark on Dorothy's forehead. She knew that she could not hurt the girl in any way. And when she saw Dorothy's silver slippers, she began to tremble in fear, for she knew what a powerful charm belonged to them. But the Wicked Witch also was very clever. And she knew that Dorothy did not know the true power of the silver slippers. And so the Wicked Witch laughed to herself. I can still make her my slave if she does not know how to use her power. Then she said to Dorothy, "Come with me and see that you mind everything I tell you, for if you do not, I will make an end of you as I did the Tin Man and the Scarecrow." And the witch led Dorothy through the castle until they came to the kitchen. And the witch made Dorothy clean the pots and pans and sweep the floor and put wood in the fire. And when Dorothy was hard at work, the witch would go down into the courtyard and harass the lion like a horse, harness the lion like a horse. And she wanted the lion to pull her cart and take her wherever she wanted to go. But as she opened the gate, the lion gave a loud roar and bounded at her so fiercely that the witch was afraid and ran out and shut the gate again. "If I cannot harness you," said the witch, "I won't give you any food and you'll starve. You'll have nothing more to eat until you do what I say." And so after that she took no food to the imprisoned lion, and every day she came to the gate at noon and asked, "Are you ready to be harnessed like a horse and pull my wagon?" And the lion would answer, "No, but if you come into this yard, witch, I will eat you." And the reason the lion did not have to do as the witch wished was that very night, while the witch was asleep, Dorothy carried him food from the cupboard, and after he ate, Dorothy would sit beside him and they would talk of their troubles and try to plan some way to escape. But they could not find a way to get out of the castle, for it was always guarded by the yellow Winkies, who were the slaves of the Wicked Witch and too afraid of her not to do as she ordered. Look, here's a poor lion. He's locked up in the cage, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, now Dorothy worked very hard during the day, and her life became very sad. And she knew it would be difficult to return to Kansas. And sometimes she held little Toto in her arms, and she cried bitterly. Now the Wicked Witch... Oh, thank you, honey. Now the Wicked Witch had a great longing to own Dorothy's silver shoes. She knew the power of those shoes would make her more evil and feared than she already was. And she watched Dorothy carefully to see if she ever took off her shoes, thinking she might steal them. But Dorothy only removed them when she took a bath at night, and the witch was too afraid of the dark to dare enter Dorothy's room at night to take the shoes. And her fear of water was even greater than her fear of the dark, so she never came near Dorothy till when she took a bath. And the old witch never touched water and never let water touch her in any way. But the wicked witch was very clever, and she finally thought of a trick so that when she could get Dorothy's silver shoes, and so she placed an iron bar in the middle of the kitchen floor, and then she used her magic to make the bar invisible. And in this way she knew Dorothy would trip over the bar and lose her shoes. But when Dorothy tripped over the invisible bar, she only lost one shoe, and the witch quickly snatched it up and put it on her own foot. But Dorothy saw what had happened, and she grew angry and said, "Give me back my shoe!"
"I will not," said the witch. "Now it's my shoe and not yours, and someday I'll get the other one too."
And this made Dorothy so angry that she picked up a bucket of water that she'd been using to wash the floor and threw it on the witch. Instantly, the witch gave a loud scream. And then as Dorothy looked in wonder, the witch began to shrink and melt away.
No! 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 See what you've done! You bad, bad, bad girl!
And she's starting to melt. Look at her. She's just bubbling and hissing and melting right down into the ground. Oh, see what you've done! In a minute I shall melt away! "Oh, I'm very sorry," said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch melting away like brown sugar. And in a few minutes the witch turned into a brown, melted, shapeless mass on the floor. And all that was left of the witch was the silver shoe. And Dorothy picked it back up and cleaned it and put it back on her own foot. Then, being free at last, Dorothy ran to the courtyard to tell the lion that the wicked witch of the West had come to an end, and that they were no longer prisoners in the strange land. Look at this. Are they all dancing happily? Huh? Look at everybody's dancing. Are they happy? Why are they so happy?
As they killed the witch.
The lion was very happy to hear that the wicked witch had been melted away, and Dorothy unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. And next, Dorothy gathered all the Winkies together and told them that they were no longer slaves, and the Winkies were very happy, for they had been made to work hard for many years, and they made the day of their freedom a holiday and spent the time feasting and dancing. "If only our friends the Scarecrow and the Tin Man were with us," said the lion, "I would be totally happy." "Don't you think there is some way we could rescue them?" said Dorothy. "Well, we can try," answered the lion. And so they called the Winkies and asked them to help rescue their friends. And the Winkies said that they would be delighted to do so for Dorothy, since she had set them all free. And so a group of the Winkies traveled that day and part of the next day until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Man lay, all battered and bent. And his axe was next to him, but the blade was rusted and the handle broken off. And so the Winkies lifted him and carried him back to the castle. And when they reached the castle, Dorothy asked the Winkies if any of their people were tinsmiths. And she found that there were several Winkies who were skilled tinsmiths. And in a little while they came to the castle with baskets of tools. And they looked the Tin Man over carefully and told Dorothy that they thought they could mend him so that he would be as good as new. And so the Winkies worked for 3 days and 3 nights, and they hammered and twisted and pounded at the legs and the body and the head of the Tin Man. And at last he was straightened out into his old form, and his joints worked as well as ever. And when at last he walked into Dorothy's room and thanked her for rescuing him, he was so happy that he cried tears of joy. Look. He's crying real tears, isn't he? Yeah, well, he has a heart if he could cry real tears because he was so happy. Now, Dorothy and the lion were so happy to see their friend, and they danced and celebrated all day. And they said, "If only we had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Man, "I would truly be happy." "We must try to find him," said Dorothy, and so she called the Winkies to help her. And they walked all that day and part of the next day, until they came to the tall tree where the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. And the Tin Man quickly chopped the tree down, and Dorothy and the Winkies carried the Scarecrow's clothes back to the castle. And as soon as they entered the castle, the Winkies began stuffing the clothes with nice clean straw. And soon the Scarecrow stood before them, as good as ever, and he thanked them over and over again for saving him. And now that they were reunited, they were all back together again, Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days at the castle, where they found everything they needed to make themselves comfortable. But after a few days, they all decided it was time to return to Oz and ask for the things that they had been promised. So they sadly said goodbye to the Winkies, and they packed food and blankets for the journey back to the Emerald City. And so here they are. They're going back. And the next morning, Dorothy and her friends began their journey to the Emerald City. And they walked a long way and could still not see a sign of the Emerald City. And since they had been carried to the castle by the winged monkeys, they were not at all sure in which direction they should walk. And so days passed, and they still saw nothing but the fields and the forest. And the Scarecrow began to complain. He said, we've surely lost our way, and unless we can find it again in time to reach the Emerald City, I shall never get my brains. Oh, and I will never get my heart, said the Tin Man. And I do not have the courage to keep tramping forever without getting anywhere at all, said the Lion. And Dorothy sat down on the grass to think. What's this?
A whistle.
Oh. Who does she call with that whistle? Who gave it to her?
Who?
Remember the field mice?
Yeah?
They said to call her. Suppose we should call the field mice, Dorothy said. They could probably tell us the way to the Emerald City. Well, to be sure they could, cried the Scarecrow. Why didn't we think of that before? And so Dorothy blew the whistle that the Queen of the Field Mice had given her, and in a few minutes they heard the pattering of tiny feet, and many of the small gray mice came running to her, and the Queen herself came up to Dorothy. What can I do for you, my friend? She squeaked. We've lost our way, said Dorothy. Can you tell us where the Emerald City is? Well, certainly, answered the Queen, but it's a great way off. For you have had it. It certainly, answered the Queen, but it's a great way off, for you have had it at your backs all the time. And then she noticed Dorothy's golden cap and suggested that Dorothy use the golden cap to call the winged monkeys who would carry everyone to the Emerald City. Oh, remember, whoever has that cap can use it 3 times. So Dorothy recited the magic words that were written inside the cap, and in a few minutes she heard the chattering and flapping of wings as the band of winged monkeys flew up to her. And the king bowed before Dorothy and asked, What is your command? And Dorothy explained that they had lost their way and wished to be taken to the Emerald City. And no sooner had she spoken than the monkeys picked up Dorothy, Toto, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion, and they carried them in their long, hairy arms all the way to the Emerald City. And the journey took a very short time, and when they reached the gates of the Emerald City, the monkey set them down carefully, and then the king bowed to Dorothy and flew swiftly away, followed by all his band. That was a good ride, said Dorothy. Yes, and a quick way out of our troubles, answered the Lion. It certainly was lucky that you remembered to bring that golden cap. Now, Dorothy and her friends walked up to the gate of the Emerald City and rang the bell. Now, we are just about out of tape on this one again. Look at how far we got.
We have a bell.
We have a bell. That's right, sweetie, we do. Well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put this onto another tape now, because this is side 2 and the tape is almost gone. So, Hunter, Cheyenne, if you're listening to this later, what are you going to do?
What?
You're going to have to find the next tape to continue it, aren't you?
I'm
There's a-
going to get another tape.
Yeah, we'll get another tape and we'll put it on here. But when you now, if you want to hear the rest of the story, go find the other tape and put on side 3. This was side 2. Now you need to listen to side 3.